We are on Belle Isle in Michigan, just off the coast of Detroit, in the Detroit River between Michigan and Ontario, one of the most beautiful cities in America. Detroit, one of the most historic, the home of the auto industry, the home of Motown. Not only is Michigan a crucial battleground state that could likely decide the election next month, but this week it became a focal point of one of the literally craziest news stories in recent memory, the thwarted plot to kidnap and possibly harm Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. As our show coincidentally planned to be in Michigan this weekend to speak with voters and lawmakers alike, I asked my panel how they felt about the head of their state becoming the target of violent militias. Watch.
I think what happened is absolutely disgusting, what they tried doing to her. I think it's absolutely despicable. And just because I disagree with Governor Whitmer, I would not vote for her again to be our governor. I think it's absolutely disgusting, and I think whoever's responsible for that should be prosecuted for sure.
I think it's unfortunate that people use their freedom of speech in this way, that they feel as though they have to plot against the governor because they disagree basically with her practices and they disagree with what she's doing. She's had many executive orders in place, but what she's done is try to contain COVID-19 in Michigan. And I mean, here in Michigan alone, we had over 7,000 deaths from COVID-19. There's over 220,000 deaths of COVID-19 in this country. And so having the shutdowns was something that she felt was necessary to do. And it did help actually with lowering our numbers. And so it's unfortunate that some Americans don't agree with, specifically in Michigan, some Michigan residents don't agree with her practices and her procedures, but to take it out in this way is really sad.
Whenever anybody tries to take a life, it's a terrible thing. But the president takes a different take on it. And he denounces the governor. He doesn't try to send help. And he sows the seeds of social unrest by his words and his actions. And the president's words matter. People listen. He is the leader of this country. And he doesn't denounce white supremacists. He allows the unrest to continue happening and incites violence in some ways. I am an Indian American. I am a brown woman. My children are brown. I am afraid. For the first time in my life, I am afraid for my and my family's life and what will happen, if he decides that he's going to cause more unrest to get votes.
I say it's disgusting, it's sad, but I also think it's a symptom of the hate that's been pushed in this country and the division. I don't think that would have happened if we had a male governor. They did that because she's a woman and they disagreed with her. These are terrorists and they need to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But what disgusts me more is that our current president, instead of lifting up the disgusting nature of this, chose to attack our governor and just say that they disagreed with her. We also had a sheriff out at a rally with the same people that were arrested. So we talk about the police did their job in arresting, well, the police are on the stage with them. This is a symptom of a much larger problem, and Donald Trump is that problem.
So let's face it, I don't agree with Governor Whitmer, but a militia group like that trying to attack a human life, I think it's very, very disgusting. Those militia members, as they claim, they are also hating on freedom of Americans in this country. And also they are hating on Donald Trump. Donald Trump was the one and his administration and law enforcement to catch these criminals, while the governor is trying to defund police. So in that aspect, we need to give law enforcement credit that they were the ones that apprehended these criminals, and now they must face justice. Because if they don't face justice, justice will not be served, and this attack can happen anywhere in America. And that's why these are not Americans that tried doing this. These are terrorists.
There was a time, Holly, when I thought democracy was at risk. Now I believe democracy is in peril. What we share is a democratic way of doing business, of engaging, and that's eroding. And this is an egregious example of it, of people not being able to, when they disagree, not being able to even begin to find common ground. so they engage in an act like that. And again, I think it's a warning for this reason too. This is not a threat from outside the U.S. This is something that was done. I mean, one of the persons who was apprehended lives 10 miles from me. This is coming from within. It's not about them, it's about us. And as I said earlier, if we don't understand that job one is getting back to what it means to be America and an American and engage each other democratically, what else is there? I mean, that has to be job one.
Let's go a little deeper on that. What it means to be American. Whether you describe that as your existence or the American dream, I think I want to ask you all what you believe it means to be American.
To me, being American is the most proudful thing ever. To me, it's something that has to deal with honesty. It has to deal with pride, having pride in your country, having pride in your leadership, having pride to live in a country where it is the land of the free, and having the opportunity to pursue the American dream.
It means that I could get in my car any time of the day and drive in peace without being ambushed, without being taken as a hostage, and without being fearing for my life, and knowing that we have law enforcement in this country protecting us, and knowing that I'm in a safe country. Unlike other countries, like my country, Lebanon, where my parents immigrated from. They immigrated from a civil war and lawlessness. And in this country, we have the pleasure of living in peace.
And this country was born out of protest. I think to believe in justice and dignity for all and fairness, that's what it is to be an American, to fight against tyranny and to fight against othering other people. We've all come from all walks of life and from all countries into this space. This is a true melting pot. So I believe to be an American, it's to fight for togetherness and unite as one.
I believe what it means to be an American is you have the right to your own opinion. We're all capable in America to have our own opinion and voice our own opinions. All of us sitting around here right now have different opinions, but there's one thing we have in common, and that's we're Americans.
I feel privileged to be an American, and I'm sorry for the rest of the world that is not, because no matter what we say, this is a country where you can come, where you can become something, where you can work hard and feed your family, where you can be safe on the streets, where your children are okay. And these are all the fundamental values. And I can be a woman who walks on the sidewalk at night and not worry. But I am worried now. And it is because I think those fundamental values are being pushed aside by hatred and bigotry and racism. And we have to stop that and come back together as the country that we once were.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.